We're talking Syracuse basketball today. Are the Orange too low in the ACC preseason poll?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are going back to Syracuse basketball because, well, the football team remains on a bye week, and, well, we have some news with Syracuse basketball with the preseason ACC poll coming out. We're going to talk about it. Is Syracuse too low? Plus, we're going to go over Donnie Freeman. Should he be in consideration for Rookie of the Year in the ACC? And what should his expectations be for this season, the five-star freshman? And is Syracuse basketball an NCAA tournament team this season? We're going to break it all down here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Syracuse basketball season, it's right around the corner. I mean, all of a sudden, a lot of hype with the football team at 5-1 at the halfway point, 2-1 in the conference. It's been mostly a football podcast for the last couple of months, but it's time for basketball season because it's coming. Syracuse plays its first exhibition game October 26th, which is 9 days from now. And then they have another one on October 30th. And then Syracuse basketball tips off the new season at home on Monday, November 4th against Lemoyne. Should be a fun one and should be a fun season for Syracuse basketball, except that's not what the ACC preseason poll had to say about our Orange, which came out very recently. Syracuse was picked to finish 11th in the ACC this season. Now, no shocker that the top teams were Duke and North Carolina, and for what it's worth, Duke got the most first place votes. That's just some context for you. But Syracuse finished 11th, or not finished 11th, was voted as the 11th best team in the ACC heading into this basketball season. And here's the deal. It's actually very similar with what I said in August about the football team. All right? When we were talking about Syracuse football in the preseason, I think Syracuse fans, including myself, had higher expectations than a lot of the national experts. Even though their over-under was at 7.5 wins over on FanDuel, they were still picked to finish 12th in the ACC this season. And, well, at 5-1, 2-1 in the conference, they are. Look, I don't want to jinx anything, but they're well on their way to exceeding 12th within the conference, okay? They should be able to finish at least inside the top 10 for Syracuse football, you'd hope, after the start that they have. It's very similar, all right, because Syracuse basketball is picked to finish 11th. I'm not going to pretend that I am a complete expert on every single team in the ACC. But just a feel for Syracuse basketball's roster, I do think 11th is a bit low for the Orange with where they are at right now. For context for you guys, Syracuse basketball last season was 5th in the ACC. They had the same conference record as Clemson, by the way. Clemson was an Elite 8 team last year. Same conference record. Take that for what it's worth, but they had the same record within the conference last season. Obviously, when they two matched up head-to-head, it didn't really go well for Syracuse, but that's context for you guys. I think that this Syracuse basketball roster is more well-rounded, and I think it is deeper than what it was last season. Last season, once Naheem McLeod went down with an injury, Syracuse effectively ran a six-man rotation for more than half the year. A six-man rotation. It was Judah Mintz, J.J. Starling, Chris Bell, Justin Taylor, Malik Brown, Quadir Copeland. Now, they had solid top-end talent, okay? And they lost some of that top-end talent. Judah Mintz, obviously, he's trying to make it with the 76ers right now. JJ Starling, he's staying, but I'm just pointing at the six-man rotation. But JJ Starling, hopefully you can get second half JJ Starling, right? Chris Bell's one of the better shooters in the country. He's returning. Malik Brown, he's at Duke now, by the way. All ACC defender. Quadir Copeland over at McNeese State now was a runner-up for sixth man of the year. So they had pretty decent top-end talent, and a couple of those guys are returning this season. However, with the top-end talent, the supporting cast, the depth was just non-existent for Syracuse basketball last season. It was effectively a six-man rotation, really a five-man rotation with just Justin Taylor, and you can mix in a Kyle Cuff or Peter Carey, whoever, as another player to come off the bench. That was about it. Justin Taylor actually started, but you get the point, right? You get the idea that this was a top-heavy team last season. They didn't necessarily have a true floor general. This is no disrespect to Judah Mintz, but he was a great player, not a true floor general, in my opinion. And they also had no front court whatsoever. Very, very little front court. Syracuse was getting killed on the glass night in and night out. They were the third worst rebounding team in the ACC last season. And look, Naheem McLeod goes down, who's normally a backup center to begin with. They effectively didn't have a center on the roster last season. They asked Malik Brown to be the center for more than half the year. They were the third worst rebounding team in the ACC. This season, maybe they lack the same top-end talent that last year had, but they are certainly deeper, and they definitely improved the front court, right? The starting lineup, let's take a look at it real quick. Hofstra transfer Jaquan Carlos, I think, is going to be the starting point guard. He brings good defense. He's a decent enough shooter. And most importantly, he's a true floor general. This is someone who led his conference in assists last season with 6 a game. At one point last year, he had a game with 19 assists. So he's a pretty good player in Jaquan Carlos. Kind of an underrated transfer portal pickup, in my opinion. JJ Starling is returning as a junior, and you'd hope that he can take that next step in development. He was obviously very good in the second half of the season. He struggled in the first half because, well, he was adjusting to his new team, and he had just gotten shoulder surgery. It makes sense, but in the second half, it seemed like a switch flipped. His shot was a lot better. He was making them a lot more. He should be better this season than what his overall numbers indicate last year. Chris Bell, he's back, one of the best shooters in the ACC, if not the country. You got 5-star Donnie Freeman, and you also have the Colorado transfer Eddie Lampkin now as the center, a very, very capable starting center for Syracuse basketball this year. The reserves are better. Chance Westry, Elijah Moore, Georgia State transfer Lucas Taylor, and you also got Kyle Cuff coming back. And obviously the reserves in the front court, Naheem McLeod in a much better role this season than he was last year compared to, last year he was the starting big man where he's never really been a full-time big man, and he was only playing about 15 minutes a night anyway when he was healthy. He's coming back in a much better role as the backup to Lampkin. Jair Davis, the Delaware transfer, the backup to Donnie Freeman. And you also got Peter Masterovich, the last-minute addition for Syracuse basketball in the front court. So overall, I think the lineup this year is deeper than what it was last season. They got a true floor general in Jaquan Carlos. They got upside potentially in Chance Westry if he can stay healthy. Of course, he's got something dealing with right now. I think it's an illness, what I read online. Hopefully he's good to go for the season. And you now got a starting big man in Eddie Lampkin, who last year averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds at Colorado and was an absolute menace in the tournament last season for that team. So that's why I would say to you that Syracuse looks a little bit low at 11th in the ACC poll. But again, I'm not an expert on every team. Maybe they are the 11th, but I think 11th is a little bit low for Syracuse basketball, all right? I think that's low. However, this is really, really where the football team and the basketball team kind of mirror each other. I think we can all agree that coming into this season, Syracuse football had a much more talented roster than they had the previous year. But they were still picked to finish 12th in the preseason poll, and that is because, to that point, Syracuse football had never finished in the upper half of the ACC aside from 2018, right? They had gone 5 straight years of being a bottom half conference team. So the experts, they picked Syracuse to finish low in the ACC this season, even though they upgraded the roster. They had a brand new coaching staff. They were effectively telling Syracuse football, it got to prove it. And that is exactly what they are saying to the Syracuse basketball team. Yeah, It feels a little bit low being 11th within the conference, right? We're all hoping for a tournament appearance, and finishing 11th in your conference is not a recipe to get there unless you're NC State last season. But they're telling us they got to go out and prove it, that they are not going to give automatic preseason respect to this team. Go out and earn it. That is what they are saying. So I get it. Now I think they can overachieve that. I think they will. I think they will overachieve 11th in the ACC. But that's where they're coming from. They're saying, look, you got to go out and earn it. That's what the football team had to do. So far, they're doing that. Now the basketball team has to follow suit. They got to go out and prove why they should be ranked higher than 11th right now in the ACC. Do you think that Syracuse is too low in the ACC preseason poll? Leave a comment in the comments section below your thoughts on where Syracuse sits in the conference. Once again, it's a basketball episode on Locked On Syracuse today. We just went over Syracuse being 11th in the ACC preseason poll. Now coming up, we're going to talk about Donnie Freeman, the 5-star freshman. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And Syracuse football. Let's talk Syracuse football for a second. I know this is a basketball episode, but let's talk some football, all right? They're 5-1 right now, 2-1 in the ACC, and the Orange's odds to win the conference outright are at plus 4,000, all right? You think Syracuse can potentially run the table and win the conference maybe? Well, check it out on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Syracuse basketball 5-star freshman Donnie Freeman was not given a single vote for ACC Rookie of the Year. And you might be asking yourself right now, how is that possible? He is a 5-star power forward. This is the best Syracuse basketball recruit since Carmelo Anthony. You can go look it up. He is the highest ranked Syracuse basketball recruit since Carmelo Anthony. He ranks anywhere between the 6th best player in the class of 2024 to the 15th best player in the class of 2024. Between 6 and 15, I would call that an elite 5-star freshman Donnie Freeman. So how is it even possible that this guy, Donnie Freeman, is not getting a single vote for ACC Rookie of the Year? He's a 3-level scorer. He should be a solid defender. He should be a one-and-done NBA prospect. How is it possible? Well, there's just one problem, and this is where we kind of have to take our Syracuse cap off for a second. I know I'm not wearing a hat, but you get the idea. You got to take off your Syracuse hat for a second and look a little bit more holistically. All right, I'll use an SAT word for you, holistically. Let's look at the big picture in the ACC Rookie of the Year. There is a kid at Duke, and I know it's Duke. I know you guys might be thinking, oh, Duke bias. Well, here's the thing. They got this kid by the name of Cooper Flagg. Now, Cooper Flagg is, the consensus #1 player overall in the country. The #1 player in the country this season is Cooper Flagg. That's right. In fact, if you check out a lot of NBA mock drafts, he's projected to be the #1 pick in the next NBA draft. He got all but one vote for ACC Rookie of the Year. So think about all the 5 stars within the ACC, because Donnie Freeman's not the only one. Cooper Flagg's not the only one. Duke has some. North Carolina has some. I'm sure other schools have 5 stars as well. I just don't know all of them off the top of my head. Think about all the 5 stars within the ACC coming into this year, right? Cooper Flagg got all but one vote for ACC Rookie of the Year. So I get it. You can use it as bulletin board material, but I don't see it as a slight or a disrespect because of how good Cooper Flagg is. And in my opinion, he should be the favorite to be the preseason Rookie of the Year in the ACC. He's the #1 player in the country. It makes a lot of sense. And for what it's worth, the player who got one vote, who just So Cooper Flagg just missed out on being the consensus preseason Rookie of the Year. The kid who got one vote is Cal's Jeremiah Wilkinson. I had to look him up. He is a 3-star freshman. Now, Jeremiah Wilkinson can be a great player. That could happen. 3 stars definitely pan out. It happens. He can be great. But I'll be honest with you guys. I'm pretty sure the person who voted for him has got to be from Cal. It's got to be from Cal. And if that person's voting for Jeremiah Wilkinson, I mean, probably shouldn't be trusted with a vote anymore. But that's neither here nor there. But to the larger point, he was the only one who got one vote aside from Cooper Flagg. So I get it. Donnie Freeman, a 5-star power forward. We have sky-high expectations for him. This should be a one-and-done player. 9 of the past 10 number 6 overall players in the country have been one and done. But Cooper Flagg is the number 1 player in the country, so I get it. I understand. For more context, 3 of the past 10 number 6 overall players have been All-Americans, one of which I know for a fact was Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs, as a true freshman, was an All-American and was a one-and-done player. Donnie Freeman could have that level of impact. It's possible. I mean, I wouldn't put that expectation on him, but it can happen where he is an All-American player this year. And he still might not win Rookie of the Year because Cooper Flagg exists at Duke. He exists. That's the reality of it. Now, I think Donnie's going to be great. I think he's going to be excellent. I'm super excited to watch him play. But if I had to pick myself, who should be the preseason favorite for ACC Rookie of the Year? Again, it's preseason. Donnie Freeman could have a better year than Cooper Flagg. It could happen. But right now, at this very moment, I'm recording this actually on October 16th, but it's going to release on October 17th. I would probably say that Cooper Flagg should be the favorite to win ACC Rookie of the Year. That's my take on it. Agree with me, disagree with me. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Should Donnie Freeman be the favorite to be the ACC Rookie of the Year? All right, so we talked about Syracuse being a little bit low in the preseason ACC poll. We talked about Donnie Freeman and his odds of winning Rookie of the Year. Still got high expectations for him, but Cooper Flagg, the number 1 player in the country, is at Duke. It just is what it is. Now, coming up, is Syracuse basketball a tournament team? And when will we actually know if they can make the tournament this season? HIMSS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMSS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMSS helps you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. I got a question for all of you. Is Syracuse basketball going to make the NCAA tournament this season? Leave a comment in the comment section below if you think that Syracuse basketball will make the tournament this year. All right? It's been 3 years. 3 years for this team, and I think I can speak for most, if not all of you, that it's time. It's time for Syracuse basketball to get back in the NCAA tournament. This is year 2 of Adrian Autry, all right? This is a better roster, in my opinion, on paper. And last year, for what it's worth, they won 20 regular season games for the first time since 2013-14. The progress is there. They didn't play in the NIT last year, but they qualified for the NIT. They just said before it was released that they didn't want to play in it. Right? So if you're an NIT team, you're not that far from being an NCAA tournament team. Here's the deal. When will we know? Are they a tournament team or are they not a tournament team? All right. And maybe it's unfair to say that we will know early on in the season, right then and there, that this is a tournament team, but it's my thought. This is my thought process because last year there was an indicator to me whether or not Syracuse basketball would be better. I didn't necessarily expect them to make the tournament last year, but were they going to be better than the years prior? And that was the Colgate game. I believe it was the third game of the season. And Colgate had our number the past few years, but Syracuse, they came back from a 20-plus point deficit in the second half to defeat Colgate last year. It was a great win. So they kind of got that monkey off their back. And look, the results were there at the end that they won 20 games in the regular season. Evidently, they were a better team than the prior couple of years. They do play Colgate again. It's the second game of the season, I want to say. I believe they start with Lemoyne, then they got Colgate, and then they got Youngstown State. Those are the first three regular season games. Assuming they beat Colgate, and that's not really an assumption. They could lose to Colgate. They've lost to Colgate before. They should be 3-0, right? Let's be optimistic. Let's be optimistic here. They're 3-0, okay? Well, then there's the fourth game of the season, and I think this is where we'll really know. Maybe we won't know, but we'll have a good idea of how good Syracuse basketball is. And that's when they play Texas at the Barclays Center, okay, in the Legends Classic. We'll really see how much progress this team has made. Texas right now is 19th in the preseason AP poll, so they are a pretty damn good team. This is a team that should be in the tournament once again. Syracuse against tournament teams last season, okay? I charted them all. They played 13 games against NCAA tournament competition last year. Here were the results, all right? Syracuse went 5-8 in those games. Doesn't really sound great, but it also doesn't sound terrible, but actually it's worse than what you might think. 5-8. Here's why. Number one of those games was against Colgate. Colgate only gets into the tournament because they have to win their conference. If they win their conference, they're in. If they finish second in the conference, they are out. They are a mid-major team. So do I really kind of count that as a tournament team? Sure, they made it, but they could have easily lost their conference championship game, and then they're not, right? Then the other two wins, here's our two wins right here, were against NC State in the regular season last season. Before the Wolfpack got hot. The Wolfpack got hot in March. And we saw in the third game what happened. When the two squads, they played in the ACC tournament, and NC State destroyed us. It was really not a competitive game in the second half. Right? But, to Syracuse's credit, that was a tournament team technically, and they ended up having a Cinderella run to the Final Four. But really, during the regular season when Syracuse was playing them, that was not really a tournament team. Okay? They were 5-8, and it's really not as good as what that might say. Now, you do have to give Syracuse credit for beating North Carolina at home. That was a big win last year. And they also beat Oregon in a neutral site last year, which was really an impressive win. Oregon had a lot of injuries, but Syracuse still beat them by 20 points. So you got to give Syracuse a little bit of credit for that. All right? Here's where the kicker is, okay? Here's the kicker. In the 8 losses that Syracuse had against tournament teams last year, they lost by an average of nearly 20 points. Just think about that. Let it marinate. When they played against tournament competition and they lost, they typically got blown out. They lost by an average of nearly 20 points a game. There was only one loss that was within single digits, and that was the first game against Clemson, which was a home game. That's it. So what do I want to see? What is the overall point with what I am telling you here? Texas should be a tournament team this season, and maybe they just fall flat on their face and they're not. So, and we won't know that until really the season is played. But let's assume they are a tournament team. I think at minimum, you have to expect that Syracuse looks good in that game, that they look competitive in that one. A win would be great. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that Syracuse on a neutral site beats Texas. It can happen. Okay. But let's say Syracuse loses 74-71 on a buzzer beater. Now, I'm sure in the post game for that one, I'm going to be pissed. But at the same time, right now at this very moment, okay, that'll look good on the net rankings. And remember, the net matters. And I think we would know, even with like a 3-point buzzer beater loss to a team like Texas, that I think Syracuse basketball is going to be pretty good, right? And then there's the flip side. You get blown out by 30 points. So you might be asking yourselves, is this here we go again? I think that's my point. That's my point. At least be competitive against Texas. 4th game of the season. Let's see where they are really at. That is a measuring stick game for Syracuse basketball. We will have a good idea of how good or maybe not good this team is after that game. Hopefully, they can do well, maybe even win, maybe even pull off a stunner. They pulled off a couple stunners last year, beating North Carolina. Let's hope they can do that with Texas. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. That's right, a little bit of football talk for you. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real, and they bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast as far as future plans. Tomorrow, Poll Friday, the biggest surprise for Syracuse football so far this season. We're going to go over that on tomorrow's Poll Friday edition. Should be a 10 to 15 minute episode there. Hope you guys enjoyed this little basketball check-in, which, by the way, basketball season is pretty soon, right? I said it off the top, but I'll repeat myself. Syracuse's first exhibition game is October 26th. They got another one on October 30th. And then the new season tips off for Syracuse Monday, November 4th at home against Lemoyne. Should be a fun season. Hopefully this team can find themselves back into the NCAA tournament. It would certainly be fun. And let's just hope for a great season, everyone. Take care.